the record should reflect that the jury's back in the courtroom. Welcome back, folks. Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may call your next witness, please.
Kathleen Lammer.
Good afternoon. Could I have you raise your right hand, please, so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, please be seated. Set that glass aside. Somebody.
Oh, I poured it for her, Your
Oh,
Honor.
great. Thank you. Never mind. Have a seat. Thank you. All right. Could you please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Kathleen Mary Larimer. It's Kathleen. Mary is Mary, and Larimer, Larimer.
Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mrs. Lammer.
Good afternoon.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
What's your husband's name?
Scott.
Do you have any children?
I have had five wonderful children.
What are your remaining children's names?
I'll do it in order of age. There's Nora, and then I have identical twins, Ann and Beth, which happened to work out twin A and twin B, and then Noel, and then 2 years later would have been John.
Is your entire family here today with you?
Yes, they are.
Do you have any grandchildren?
I have 7 grandchildren.
Who is John Lammer to you?
John Larimer, he's the youngest, and I tried so hard not to focus on him being the youngest, but he is. And as the youngest child, it's like you get more time with him, maybe. The other kids all go off to school, and you've still got this one at home. And the other kids go off to college or Navy when John was still in high school. So I had him alone for a couple of years in high school. The other kids are all very similar, and John was always a little different. And I think it was from following 4 older kids. He always seemed more mature maybe than his age. He was left-handed, the others are right-handed, the others have a resemblance to each other. John looks like my grandfather. They even had different blood types. The other kids are B, John's an A.
Are you sure they have the same father?
Yes. Scott's AB, so yes.
If I could please have a photograph that's already been admitted, 2652. Please tell the jury who this is.
That is John. That's his picture for when he graduated basic going into the Navy. He followed his older brother and his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather into the Navy.
Thank you very much.
4th generation.
When was John born?
January 16th, 1985.
How old was John when he was murdered?
27.
What was John like in middle school?
Kind of quiet. Very smart. He did a thing called Future Problem Solvers, where you're part of a team and you're given this problem to solve. I mean, that's why the name Problem Solvers, and it's all real far-fetched, so it's not like real day-to-day problems. And then you work as a team to come up with solutions to these problems. And his team at middle school made it down to the finals at the state of Illinois, which he was extremely proud of that.
What was John like in high school?
Jack Donner Lockett.
Sustained.
What sort of activities did John like to do?
He tried his hand at sports, not an athlete. His sisters were the athletes. John, sophomore year in high school, played soccer and joked about the fact that he was going to bring a lawn chair and cooler because he spent all of his time sitting the bench. That was John. And so he branched out and found pursuits probably more to his abilities. He became part of the academic team. not the math part. They had other kids on the team who could answer those math questions like bing, bing, bing. But you give John an English question or especially a history question, and he was all over it. And he knew it. So their academic team did very well in high school with him on it. He also got into drama. He, as a freshman, their high school had a pit. It was a couple of steps down, and it was a big mosaic of the gator, which was the symbol. And they did a pit play, and that was before Christmas, and he was the evil, dirty, furry snow beast. And then as he got older into high school, the play he was most proud of was his senior year, and it was the Laramie Project. And he played the part of one of the reporters in the Laramie Project.
Did he write an article to the paper about being in that play?
John had a real strong sense of right and wrong, and somebody had written a letter, and there were complaints to the school about putting on this play, which was somewhat controversial in 2003, or 2002, it could have been fall of 2002. And without us even knowing it, John went ahead and wrote a letter to the editor saying that we needed to promote diversity, that there was no it's not that there wasn't diversity, but there needed to be more supportive diversity in his high school because it was not very accepting of things, and this person who was writing to say that they didn't need to show this play was wrong. And he did it very respectfully, and he got his point across very well.
Did John go to college?
Yes, he did. He majored in history and political science at the University of Wisconsin at Whitewater, graduated with honors, and after all this happened, the college approached us about naming a scholarship in his name.
What did John study while he was in school?
History and political science.
Did he talk to you often about having a career in politics?
He used to mention it, and with John, you never knew exactly when he was serious or when he was just floating it out there to see what you'd think. One of his things was 2020, presidential election to 2020. He'd run for president because he'd be 35 that year and he was going to run for president. And, he probably would have done it, or at least his name would have been on the ballot, maybe not high up for the debates, but his name would have been there.
What did John decide to do after college?
He worked his college job for a while and decided he just didn't want to do that. He didn't, 20 years later, he didn't see himself doing that. And he started talking about going into the Navy. And like I said, with John, you never really knew what to take for serious. And then the Navy literature started showing up. He was going and talking to the recruiter. And even though he had his college degree, it wasn't in a field where they would take him in as an officer easily, so he enlisted. And he came home one day and said, I did it, I enlisted. Would you rather I go in before or after the holidays? And I said, well, after, I guess. So he went in February of 2011.
Please tell the jury about his career in the military.
I think I mentioned he's fourth generation, so even though Scott was very good about holding back and not, getting his opinion in there, John did decide to go in. He did very well at basic, did very well, I think it's called A school. They send him down to Pensacola then to learn the next step. And John had a mind for details, which is why nobody liked playing trivia games with him unless he was handicapped, because he would win. He was so good at coming up with that information. So we kept teasing him that you ought to go into something that spooks, spy stuff, because you'll remember a detail and you'll have everything come out. You'll be able to put the pieces together. And that's exactly what he ended up doing. He was part of the cyber fleet at Buckley out here, which I always found funny that he's on an Air Force base when he was in the Navy, but that's what he was doing. And he was with Army, Air Force personnel, and I think there might have even been some Marines there. It was a joint force doing this. He did very, very well at the Navy. He was one of the newer people there, and yet he was looked to by the younger men, recruits. I mean, it's hard calling 22, 23-year-old people men. They're still boys to me, but they looked up to John. They were asking him questions, and even though he was one of the newer ones there, and even outside of the work aspect, he was helping. He taught one of his friends to drive. He joined the Navy right out of high school, never got his driver's license, so John taught him how to drive and helped him get his driver's license. And he was involved with stopping drinking and driving on base, especially with the younger recruits, and so they looked up to him. The Navy actually, they gave us an award for John because after, posthumously, it was a joint service award because of the work he was doing in cybersecurity, and his rating was, I can't remember, 95, 99% accurate in the reports that he put together for them. He was that accurate, and they found it so amazing because he was new at this. And then they went ahead and they created the John T. Larimer Mentoring Award, and obviously named it after John, and it's for people now in the cyber fleet who are acting as mentors to others.
Could you tell the jury about the last family vacation you got to have with John?
Well, actually, there was a family trip in June. It was a long weekend. And, my oldest daughter, Nora, and her family drove up from Louisiana. John and Noel both flew in. John was here. Noel was going to school out in Washington State. They flew into Missouri, and then Scott and Annabeth and I drove down, and we had a long weekend together, all of us under the same roof, rented a house. It was challenging because there were 5 of the grandkids there at that point, and then John and his siblings and all of us under the same roof. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad it happened and worked out. And then after that, John was working 12-hour shifts, and he'd do 2 weeks of days and 2 weeks of nights. And we came out to visit him because when he was switching from days to nights, he had a really long weekend in there. They called it the Alleluia weekend. So we came out, and he got off of work a little early on Thursday and then had all Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning to spend with us. So he got to show us some of the sights in this area because we're not from this area. And so we got to see some things like Larimer Boulevard and stuff. It's nice out here that people pronounce the last name correctly. We've got a picture of John with the sign with Larimer Boulevard.
Were movies important to John?
Yeah, his first job was at a movie theater, and then he went to a different movie theater. And I think the only reason he ever kept the job in the movie theater was so he could go in and see movies for half price or free.
Could you tell the jury about John's personality?
John had a smile that would light up a room, and it wasn't just because of the thousands of dollars of orthodonture in it. It was, he was just that kind of caring person, and he truly was. The outpouring of support of people who knew him was just, it was just amazing. Teachers that hadn't seen him in years came to express their condolences because they remembered John when he was 7. His second grade teacher wrote us a wonderful letter recalling her memories of John. And he was just that kind of a kid. He had a sense of humor that was a little advanced maybe for his peers when he was that young. And one of the things Mrs. Nygren said about him in second grade was,
Judge, I'm going to object 401 and 403.
Sustain.
Do you have a favorite memory of John surprising you?
Christmas 2011, Nora was home, Noel was home. Annabeth lived in the area, and John didn't think he told us he couldn't make it home, and it's like, okay, well, first Christmas without John, we'll survive, it'll be next year, And Scott and I went out and did a bunch of grocery shopping, because when all the kids are home, that's what you do, is grocery shop. And we got home, and somebody said, well, you need help unloading the car. And I said, yeah, we're going to need help unloading the car. And I went back out to the car to bring in some groceries, and there was John helping unload the car. So the car didn't get unloaded right away. We had to stop and say hi. He just flew in and surprised us all. We weren't expecting that.
Could you please tell the jury about the last time that you saw John?
I can tell you exactly. It was July 2nd. It was my birthday. And we met for breakfast at Rosie's Diner, which that's the only time I've ever been there. I guess it means something in the Navy that when John would attain something or one of the other guys would, that's where they would go for breakfast, as they would go out to Rosie's Diner.
Is that in Aurora?
Yes, I believe so. So we met for breakfast at Rosie's Diner, had a nice breakfast. He gave me a Buckley Air Force Base mug for my rack at home, because I collect mugs. I bought a mug from Rosie's Diner. We said goodbye in the parking lot, and the reason I remember the date so clearly, it was my birthday.
Could you please tell the jury how you learned of your son's murder?
That day, we had a few extra hours. I mean, we're from Northeast Illinois, so we had a few extra hours of not knowing anything terrible was wrong. I think it was Beth that put it together that John was at the theater, and then she called Nora, and Nora told me, and it was like 7 o'clock that morning. And so what do? The first thing you do is you flip on, CNN or one of those, and there's pictures everywhere, and it's like, oh gosh. So we called the police, we called the coroner, we called everybody we could think. We called the military base. Nobody could tell us anything, so they suggested we call hospitals. So we called, multiples of us called every hospital in the area. I asked for supervisor. I used to work in hospitals, so I would, the supervisor, explain my story. Please, please, if you have anybody there you haven't identified, tell me. No, they assured me that they had identified everybody, so they did not have anybody. So the morning drags on. It gets to be partway through the afternoon, and Scott says, we should start letting somebody else know. So made some of the hardest phone calls, almost the hardest phone calls. The worst ones were after we found out for sure, and say, we don't know what happened. All we know is John was at the theater, and now he's missing. And, they mentioned the phone calls, the ringing phones in that theater. John was pretty good about leaving his on vibrate, but it went off a bunch of times between us calling his phone and texting and saying, where are you? Call us. The Navy they wouldn't tell me if he was at work or not, if he's supposed to work at 5:30 that morning. Noel finally got somebody to tell him that no, he wasn't there. So we didn't know until I tried so hard to talk Noel out of it. He was supposed to fly home. We were celebrating my grandmother's 100th birthday that weekend. And I told John not to come home for that. I said, come home for Christmas. That'll be more important. And Noel was going to fly up from his internship in Dallas for Grandma's birthday, and he called and he said, I'm going to change my ticket. I'm going to go to Denver. And it's like, oh, no, don't worry about it. No, they'll find him. He'll be okay. He'll call us. And Noel said no, and I'm real glad he did. But he came here. I think it was some of the Navy people that met him coming off the plane, and they took him, I guess it was Gateway High School, and he called us about 8:15 our time to tell us that John was dead.
Did your family have to come out to Colorado?
We did come out. It was the Navy flew us out a couple of weeks later for a memorial service out here for all the people that couldn't come to the funeral and everything there.
Tell the jury a little bit about John's funeral.
It started really on Thursday with the motorcade from the airport, and it was truly a motorcade because it was military and because there are those people who think the way to get their point across is to protest military funerals. There were all the different motorcycle groups that escorted us back. A couple of my cousins who flew in for the funeral happened to arrive at O'Hare just a couple hours before John did. So we got to O'Hare, they take us out onto the tarmac, the plane comes in, and they've got the fire hoses doing the arch over the plane, and then they keep everybody on the plane except for the friends that came back with John, and they lowered the casket off the plane, and the whole military honor guard, to take the casket. And then driving back, we didn't go on the expressway because of this motorcade, and every town we went through between O'Hare, getting back to Crystal Lake, which, I don't know, 40 miles, 35 miles, the intersections were blocked. People were stopped. They were out of their car. Every fire station we went by had people outside, hands over their heart, people in uniform saluting, and then news helicopters overhead. It was interesting. Annabeth decided that because they were pregnant, they didn't want to do the car ride to the airport and back. So we called them as we were approaching Crystal Lake saying, you can head to the funeral home now. We should be there soon. And they said, Mom, we've been watching you on TV. We know you're coming. So they met us there. And then funeral on Friday, 2 to 3 was just family. And then 3 o'clock we opened it up to the public, and there was a line outside. The line in the room all the way out and to the outside. There's this line, and they kept saying, hurry it up, and it's like, we are hurrying, there's just this many people. And it was like that until it closed.
Could you tell the jury about the memorial service in Colorado at the Air Force Base for John?
We got to use the bathroom the president uses when he flies in. Stupid things that pop into your head. It was in an Air Force hangar, and it was fully loaded with people that John knew, people that just knew of John. The 3-star admiral that was in charge of the cyber fleet was there. There were people from NSA there, and everybody telling us what a great job John had been doing, and that's when they gave us that award that said that, and one of them made the comment, too, that you'll never know how many lives he has saved already or how many more now will be lost because he's not with us anymore, because he was just doing so good at his job.
Could you please tell the jury about the impact of John's murder on your husband, Scott Lammer?
Scott always tries to be strong. I think he feels like, the man of the family, that's what he has to do. And I could tell there were days that the only reason he was holding it together was because he didn't want me to fall apart. He was retired by then, so he took care of those details, when you have an adult son who doesn't live at home anymore. The Dunning phone call from an unpaid credit card that we didn't know we had this credit card, and then Scott dealt with that. He dealt with the memorial fund with the bank. He dealt with a lot of talking with the college about the scholarship. He took care of a lot of those details. And even though he didn't say it often, I could tell it weighed on him at night. He didn't sleep well. He still doesn't sleep well. And it's like a hole. It's an emptiness. It's like, we used to get family pictures pretty much twice a year, end of school year, somewhere around the holidays, so twice a year. And then when the kids got older and weren't changing as much, it was once a year. And I don't think we'll ever do a family picture again, because every time you look at a family picture, it jumps out at you who's missing out of that picture. It's hit him really hard. It's hit both of us really hard.
do you talk about the impact of John's murder on your sister?
Yeah, Karen took it really, really hard. In fact, sometimes I get mildly annoyed because she cries more than I do, and I think I cry a lot. I think it was because she and John would discuss issues, topical things when we were together for family holidays, and John could debate very well and was good at it, and Karen liked doing that, and they did that together a lot, and I think that's one of the reasons it impacted her so much.
And the impact on John's grandparents?
He still had his grandmother and great-grandmother. My grandmother didn't lasted until last summer, so a couple of years after John died. With Grandma, it was hard to tell. She didn't show a lot of emotion. She was very stoic. My mom cried a lot. She seemed to want to avoid talking about John in front of me, so I got tired of people acting on tippy-toe around me, so I would bring it up. Just, this is what's going on, and I'm sorry if I seem a little edgy today, but there's a lot going on with, what's coming up, or it's been a really bad day or something, so, yeah, and then my mom, she would cry, and one of the things that has evolved over the past bunch of years is one day a week or so after, I used to work as a school nurse, is after school I would go to my mom's house, and my mom and my aunt and my grandmother and I would sit and play cards, and that's when a lot of these talks would happen. John surprised them once. He was home in between leaving Pensacola at A school to travel up here, and he came home for leave for a week or week and a half, and I mentioned to him that I wouldn't be home right on time after work. I would be heading over to Grandma's to play cards, and so he showed up. And he showed up in his blue camis, his blue camouflage fatigues, and got to show off what he looked like in uniform.
What do you miss about John?
I miss being able to talk to him about the big things going on in the world. As he was so grounded and he was so aware of so many things. I never go to Chick-fil-A. Long before all that public flack about Chick-fil-A and the owner of Chick-fil-A being anti-gay and anti-gay marriage, John told us about it. It was when we were out here visiting him, and I said, oh, they're building a Chick-fil-A in Crystal Lake, and I had really enjoyed being at the one at down near my oldest daughter in Louisiana. They had a really nice play area, and John says, oh, Mom, you don't want to go to Chick-fil-A, and it's like, well, why not? He says, because the owner is using his influence to promote, bias and bigotry, and it's like, okay, John, I guess I won't go to Chick-fil-A, and I haven't. I just can't go to Chick-fil-A anymore.
Do you recall a time that John dressed up as Where's Waldo so he could be in everyone's photograph?
Judge, can we approach, please?
Yes. Ms. Stitch McGuire, you may proceed.
So sorry, was that a yes? Do you recall that time?
Kind of, yeah. He had the costume and he liked dressing up for things like that. One of his favorite Halloween costumes, he'd put a suit on, not over Superman, but over Spider-Man. And then you'd see the pictures of him with the shirt open and the spider. And the Where's Waldo, yeah, I remember that red and white striped shirt, and he came up with some kind of a hat to wear with it, and then just would be in all these different pictures.
How has John's murder changed your life?
That like we'll never have another full family photograph. I can see my kids having individual family photographs, but there will never be us together again. There's that emptiness, that hole. There's missing out on what was going to happen next in his life because he had options. The Navy was encouraging him to become an officer because of his leadership potential and what a good job he was doing. So he was talking about that. He was talking about getting out and using his Navy service in the political arena because he always said it looked good on a resume. So then he would run for president in 2020. He also mentioned maybe something he had never thought of before was teaching. And he thought about getting his teaching certificate and becoming a teacher. But those were options that he had talked about. The other thing is that, I think it was another family that mentioned the end of the line, and Scott was the only son in his family, and his dad only had sisters, so it's the end of the Lammer line unless Noel happens to have children. And that's kind of, it is what it is. You can't change it, and John may not have had children, but I think he probably would have found somebody and had children someday.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lammer. I don't have any other questions.
Ms. Brady, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions.
Your Honor, actually, I apologize. I just wanted to introduce some photographs. May I be permitted to do that?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. May I approach the witness with what's been marked as 2650 and 2651?
Yes.
Mrs. Lammer, do you recognize the person in those photographs?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
That is John.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to admit 2650 and 2651.
Ms. Brady? All right, based on my previous rulings and any previous record that I have made, P-TR-2650 and 2651 are admitted and may be published.
If I could please have 2650. Do you tell the jury where this photograph was taken?
Oh, that was John in college.
If I could please have 2651.
I love that picture. I just look at that. That was, I think it was March. I know it was spring of 2012. I think it's the Flatirons out, Boulder the Flatirons. As I knew he'd been out hiking there more than once. And I just love, he seemed so content. He seemed so much more mature. He seems, I don't know, physically to me it showed, and then when I was out here visiting, I saw it in him. He was never unhappy, but he just seemed so content with the decisions he had made and was happy with where he was at in life at that moment.
He had kind of come into his own.
Yes, he definitely had.
Thank you. This time I really have no more questions. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Brady, you still have no questions? All right, and the jury still has no questions either. May Mrs. Larimer be released from her subpoena?
Please, thank you, Your Honor.
Any objection? All right, Mrs. Larimer, thank you. Call your next witness, please.
The people call Chantel Blanc.
Good afternoon. Could I have you raise your right hand for me, please, so that I can administer an oath? You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name for the record?
My name is Chantel Jessica Blanc. Chantel, Jessica, Jessicca, Blanc, Blunk.
Ms. Pearson, you may proceed.
Mrs. Blanc, how do you know Jonathan Blanc?
I am his wife.
Could I have up 4855, please? An already admitted photograph. Who is that a picture of?
Jonathan Blanc,
What do you call him?
my hubby.
Did you call him Jonathan or John?
I called him Johnny.
When did you first meet Johnny Blanc?
We went to high school together.
Where was that?
Proctor Hug High in Reno?
Reno, Nevada?
Yes.
Did you start dating in high school?
No, we were a big group of friends, so I was dating somebody else, but, he was definitely one of the positive people in the groups, and we never actually talk because the group was just kind of big. It's full of athletic people, so we all kind of hung out together, but you can't miss him.
What about him attracted you?
In high school, obviously, he was very outgoing, very positive, always brought the energy up, and even with the struggles he was going on at home, you never saw it. He was definitely hardworking, and his smile and as odd as it sounds, his walk was very strong. He would lean forward like he's ready to challenge anything that was in front of him.
At what point did you get married?
We got married March 24th, 2007, sorry.
How would you describe what kind of person he was?
Very strong-willed. He could work a 24-hour shift on the Navy and just go, and then come home. When you should be going to sleep, he wouldn't. He would, let's get the kids, at that time, we just had our daughter, and let's go to the beach. Let's call everybody and go play volleyball. Let's barbecue. The boys used to challenge each other and make steaks and see who made the best, and it was always just positive and outgoing. He can live on a lack of sleep and still always be there. And if you needed help, he was there. If you needed to move your entire 3-story house, he was there, even if he was tired and then had to go straight back to work after that.
Now, you mentioned that he had some challenges in his life. Were there things in his life growing up that made him the person that he was?
Objection, Your
Yes.
Honor, 403 due process.
The objection's overruled with respect to the last question, but the last question was just a yes or no question, so ask your next question, please.
Do you know who he grew up with?
His grandmother, Kay, and his grandpa, Thomas Blanc, basically were his mom and dad, and then his dad, Randy Blanc.
Was he out on his own early?
Your Honor, objection, 403 due process.
Overruled.
Was he out on his own early?
Yeah, 15. He left and basically was also kicked out at the same time, living on friends' couches throughout high school. So he would sleep either in his car or just anybody would be like, hey, come stay with us. And he would stay there for a little while, didn't want to be a burden, stay somewhere else. So he would go to school full-time, work full-time, and then sleep where he could, and then he graduated with honor rolls, even with everything on top of that.
How did you see those experiences shape him as a person into the kind of man that he became?
He was a very strong person. When we had our kids, he wanted to be the ultimate husband, the best dad. He always wanted the kids to look up to him as a superhero, and just a big hero. And with everything that he'd grown up with, he could have gone down the path and used that as an excuse, but he didn't. He wanted to be better. He wanted to provide for his family, make everything better, and always optimistic.
Now, you mentioned you had kids together.
Yes.
When did you have your kids? And tell us their names, please.
Haley Marie Blanc was born September 25th, 2007, and we used to joke and say she was a belated Christmas gift because she would had to been conceived on Christmas Day. So I got her 9 months later. And we call her Lele, but he also called her his little peanut. And then Maximus Thomas Blanc is our son. He was born April 28, 2010, and we call him Maximus. We don't like anybody to call him Max. We liked Maximus because it was a strong name. If you heard that name come on the field, Johnny would automatically think it's a warrior, it's a soldier, it's somebody strong that's coming out into the field. So Johnny called him also his little tank.
Did he pick that name Maximus before you were ever even pregnant?
Oh, yes. He was on deployment, and he was in Hong Kong, and I was pregnant with our daughter in San Diego, and he got Haley Marie tattooed on his left forearm. But he was set to have a son one day, and so in the same day of getting Haley Marie tattooed, he got MT, like, kind of combined together on his back, like huge across his back for Maximus Thomas. And when he told me about it, I was like, we're having a daughter. And he goes, well, it might change if she, comes out and it's a son. Because he was just set on having a boy. He was determined he could only make boys. And I said, well, what if we end up having only girls? And he goes, I will get a boy dog and name him Maximus Thomas.
Now, did he join the military?
Yes, right out of high school.
At what branch of the military?
Navy.
Were you in Nevada at the time?
Yes. When he joined, I was still in Nevada, and he was stationed in San Diego on Coronado Island.
Did you go to San Diego with him?
Yes. Well, we had met back up, because after high school, everyone separates in life. And we were at a mutual friend's birthday party, and we bumped into each other again, and it was really funny because that night we started talking, and he goes, this is my wife. Like, he automatically off the bat called me his wife. And so we talked for that week, and he was all, well, what if I bought you a plane ticket to come down to San Diego for a few days? Would you come? And I said, well, yeah. He goes, you would just leave your work and come down to San Diego? And I said, yes. He goes, well, I bought you a plane ticket. I'm like, oh. So I had to tell work I was leaving. I kind of fibbed and said it was in a family emergency. And then while I was in San Diego, we hung out, of course, and did all these memorable things. And he had asked the day I was leaving, well, what if I asked you to be my girlfriend? And I was like, are you asking me? He goes, I'm just saying what if. And I said, I would say yes. And he goes, okay, so you're my girlfriend. I said, okay. And then on the way to the airport of him, so, we talked about a long-term relationship. I felt strong enough I can handle that. On the way to the airport, he was all, well, what if I asked you to move down to San Diego? Would you? And I said, looked at him like, oh my gosh, this is like a big step, but I'm super adventurous and I like to see where things go. And I said, yes. And he goes, okay, well, you need to find out if you can move to San Diego and transfer your work. So 2 weeks later, I was living down in San Diego.
I'm going to hand you some photographs that are numbered 4695, 4696, 4691, 4692, and 4693. Do you recognize the people depicted in those photographs?
Of course.
Your Honor, I would move for the admittance of people's exhibits 4691, 92, 93, 95, and 96.
Any objection?
Nothing additional, Your Honor.
Okay, based on my previous rulings and the previous records that I have made, P-TR-4691, 4692, 4693, 4695, and 4696 are all admitted and may be published.
Could I have 4691 first, please? Now, who's in that photograph?
Me and my husband.
Where are you?
We are on a family day cruise on the CVN 68 Nimitz. It's an aircraft carrier.
And where was that? Where was that taken?
San Diego.
Could I have 4692, please? And who's in this photograph?
Lele and Haley and Johnny.
And Haley, you call Lele.
Yes, sorry.
Do you know when this photograph was taken, or where you were at the time?
We were here in Colorado, and it was just about a month and a half, 2 months before July 20th. We went on a family hike. It was one of the things that we loved doing. We were a very active family.
4693? And where was this?
The same day, we're hiking, and that's Maximus, Johnny, and myself. And Johnny felt like I talked too much, so his way was always just kissing me, and I would laugh.
And stop talking.
Yes.
4696?
That's my little family. That's Haley, Maximus, and Johnny.
And 4695? Did I get the number right, 4695? Do you have a photograph in front of you that says 4695? Okay. Oh, maybe we don't have it in there? All right. Well, just hold it up.
Okay.
You can hold it up so the jury can see that one. And when was that photograph taken?
We had flew into Colorado about the same time of hiking and everything, and we decided to drive back to Reno, so we had like a family road trip. So this was in Salt Lake City, and we pulled over because Johnny was talking about, this used to be a big lake and it dried out, so now it's a whole bunch of salt. So we went out there and started digging things, and Johnny had not carved, but wrote in the sand, salt, our initials, and I remember we kept trying to take a good picture because he always wanted me to do it because we used to joke about I'm Asian and I do Asian up high and would try to get everybody in it. But I couldn't, so we kept laughing, and then Maximus just kept screaming and wanting to hold the camera and laugh, and Johnny just took the camera, and we were kind of laughing and trying to hold a smile at the same time. It ended up taking the picture, and it came out perfect.
Thanks, you can put it down. Now, at some point, did Johnny get out of the military?
Yes, he got out July 2009, and that was because at the time there were some family things going on Johnny's side of the family where his uncle could not take care of their son, who's the same age as our daughter, so technically would be Johnny's cousin. And we said that we would take him, but social services felt that because his name was Davey, had special needs, that they wanted two parents. So Johnny finished out his enlistment and then got out, and we had discussed when the adoption was finalized, then he would get back with the military.
Where did you move in 2009?
We came to Colorado. We moved, first place was Thornton.
At some point, did you move back to Nevada?
It had been 2011, and that was because my mom had gotten stage 1 cancer. So I moved back, and we had discussed that once, because he had to go through all these interviews and explain to the military why he should come back. So it was like a job interview, why they should take him back. And it was such a long process and paperwork that with what was going on with my mom, I took the kids and we drove back to Reno, and I moved in with Johnny's father, and Johnny would come back to Colorado, work until everything was processed and paper was sent back, because Johnny was trying to get back into the Navy because he was determined to be a Navy SEAL.
Do you recall the last time that you spoke to him?
We had conversation, like an actual conversation was probably about 2 days before, and it was a really good talk. Like, we talked about with what was going on and what our plan was, and we needed we needed Johnny back. We needed our family to be together because Maximus is starting to walk and talk, and I'm taking all these photos, and we need him there instead of us flying to come visit, and he would drive to come visit us. like this back and forth. I needed my family back together, and he felt the same way. And so, I'm sorry, I got
That's
lost.
the last time that you spoke to him? Was it a couple
We
of
were
weeks?
talking on the phone, and it was a really good talk, and he was telling me how much he loved me, and he knew from the beginning of our relationship that I was going to be the one, because he knew that we both struggled in life and became such better people than our lives, that we were strong and we wanted the same exact things. We were both crazy. Like, it made sense when we were together, but like if you knew just him, you'd be like, wow, he's really crazy and outgoing and positive, but you couldn't help but be around him. And the same thing with me. And then we came together and we were just crazy, and we talked about all these memories and things that we were going to do, and he was going to come back to
Your Honor,
Reno that
I'm
Saturday.
going to object at this point for 3 due process hearsay.
Sustained. Ask a question, please.
Were you in Reno when you found out what had happened?
Yes.
And how did you find out?
He had texted me saying that he might be going to the movies with a friend, and so the next morning, we don't turn on the TV at home, and nobody had told me anything, and I wake up because my kids are hungry, so it's get them dressed, make them breakfast, and my phone had rang, and it was a number I didn't know, and I just ignored it, and I was expecting a voicemail, and then it called me right again, so I was like, okay, so I just put the kids down, I fed them, and I answered my phone. Well, it turned out to be Johnny's boss, when he was working at the hardwood flooring, to tell me that Johnny hadn't come into work yet, and if I knew that he had gone to the movie theater, and if I had turned on the TV, and I said I hadn't, and he told me what had happened, and I turned on the news.
Did someone ultimately come to your house?
Yes, so I was on the phone all day calling him, leaving voicemails, texting. The news said the list of hospitals, so started calling and trying to find out where he was, and nobody knew names, so they would want descriptions of what he looked like and everything. I got a phone call a little bit after noon, I believe, right after 12, and someone had called me, and I thought it was someone to tell me that he was at a hospital or he was at the school, and so but it wasn't. It was somebody to tell me that they've
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
Overruled pursuant to my ruling.
You can go ahead.
that they have created a list, and I would have to wait till 6 o'clock that evening. If I received a phone call, he was either at the hospital or the high school, he was somewhere, he was okay. They told me if somebody showed up at my door at 6 o'clock, then he was one of the people that had passed away.
Did someone show up at your door?
I was on the porch waiting, and family and friends had came over, and they were in the house, and I'm one of the types that I just need to be left alone. Don't talk to me. I just need to stay by myself. So I was on the porch, and at the time, my parents had they were doing some stuff to the house. 2 vehicles pulled up in normal cars, and regular-looking people came out, like just jeans and a button-up shirt. I automatically assumed that they were contractors or something for the house, and they had walked up, and I was about to say hi, and they asked for me. They said, "Is Chantel Blunk here?" And my heart sunk, and I was like, I remember stepping back like, wait, what? Like, and I'm looking at my watch to see what time it is, and I'm just like, and then everything started fogging out, and they were telling me that he was one of the deceased. They had a counselor or somebody there that I could talk to if I needed, and they were just talking to me, and I could hear them, but I'm not making the connection, and I'm just like confused. It felt like a dream, and you're just like, wake up, wake up, wake up, and I'm distracted because they look so normal. I don't know what you should expect, but I expected something else, I suppose, and I was just distracted, and I can hear them, and I was straight to denial, and I said, no, I don't need to speak to anybody. And I remember walking past my kids, and I just looked at them, and I had to go straight to my room, and I shut the door, and I'm still trying to wake up or make the connection of what is happening and what has happened, and did they say, and I'm trying to remember, did they say if someone's going to come to my house and tell me he's fine or he's passed? Like, I couldn't remember the conversation. So I just went straight into anger and started punching holes in my closet, and my mom is screaming, and I hear family like banging on the door, and I just couldn't stop. Like, I was not ready for tears. It was all denial.
What has the impact of Johnny's death been on your kids?
Well, Lele was supposed to start kindergarten that September, end of August, but she started, I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go to school. I couldn't go to work because she thought if I was going to leave that I might die. She thought Mommy's not coming home. Or she would want to call Daddy and hope that he'd answer. And so anywhere we try to go, I couldn't leave. We couldn't leave at all. And one time we were driving and we were singing to the radio and everything was fine. And all of a sudden she stopped and like I was singing and like I could hear this weird noise and I look back and she's locked up. Like her face is red. Her eyes are big. Her eyes are watering. And I just slam on my brake, and I wasn't thinking about who I might hit or someone's going to hit me. I just slam on the brake, park it, and jump in the back seat. And I'm telling her to breathe, breathe. And like they had told me one of the things is squeeze her. So I had to take her out and just squeeze her. And she finally took this big gasp, and she's like, I couldn't breathe. And she's trying to talk, and she's gasping. And so we had to deal with that.
Point at 403 in due process.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Does she still have that happen to her to this day?
It's been a really long time since she had, and I always carry her inhaler. It wasn't until we flew here for phase 2, and she went through security, and she was fine, and all of a sudden she locked back up in security.
How old was Maximus?
Maximus was 2.
What has the effect been on you since losing your husband?
I feel very anxious. I feel when I'm taking my kids to school and drop them off, I have to have like this pep talk. They're going to be fine. And you're praying that they're going to be fine. And when I'm walking away from the school, I still stay there. And then luckily the teachers that we've had so far, like most parents drop off their kids and they wait till the bell rings, or they drop off their kids, or they can wait till the bell rings and the teacher comes out and walks them back in. I can't just watch her walk away. I need to walk with them, make sure they're in the class, and I wait, and then I leave, and then I'm still outside the school, so I feel like I need to be strong because I don't want my kids to feel scared of the world. I need to push forward, but at the same time, I'm afraid of what's going to happen, but I can't let me stop. And then sometimes when I get anxious, I stutter, and it's because I'm trying to push through it because it's not time to break yet.
I think we have 4695 up now. Could I have that, please? And this is the photo that we were talking about.
Yes.
What do you miss most about Jonathan Blanc?
I'm a huge worrywart, and he used to pick on me for it, and he always just knew how to make me feel like everything's going to be okay. Don't stress. Money, life, it's going to be fine. We're going to hit bumps, but it's going to be fine. He was the person, when I'm high-strung, to simply just bring me down with the simplest thing. Like there was no argument, and I felt safe to come down from that. I miss his smile. I miss his hugs. There's like a list full of things. I miss him being able to let me be weird and loud and energetic, and he's right with me on it. Or I'm his partner on it, and things like that, and memories that we're going to miss out on. And
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right, the jury does not appear to have any questions either. May Mrs. Blanc be released from her subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, sir.
All right, Mrs. Blanc, thank you. Members of the jury, let's go ahead and take our second afternoon break at this time, okay? Let's take 15 or 20 minutes. Please make sure you follow all my advisements during the break. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. With respect to the penultimate objection, not the last one, but the one before the last one, it was a hearsay objection. I overruled it based on my ruling that testimony related to how a witness found out about their loved one's death or their loved one's presence in the theater and not surviving the shooting is admissible as victim impact evidence. Additionally, I don't believe that the question or this was that the answer was an answer provided for the truth or the content of the testimony. This was related to what actions this particular witness took later, and to allow the jury to understand the testimony that came right after that. The objection was with respect to what was said during a phone call, and specifically about someone telling the witness that about a list and whether someone would come to her home if Jonathan Blanc's name was not on that list or was on that list, and later she talked about someone coming to her home, and so it went to put that testimony in context and to explain how exactly she found out about Jonathan Blanc's death. So that's what I meant when I said pursuant to my previous ruling, but in addition, it's not hearsay because it was an offer for the truth of the matter. Is there anything else at this time on behalf of the people?
Your Honor, just for scheduling purposes, we have one more witness left for today.
Okay. Anything on behalf of the defense?
No, sir.
Okay, in terms of scheduling, I have asked my staff to email you a draft of the final jury instructions, so you should either have those or you should be getting those. You probably have them already by now. And I have incorporated into them the suggestions made by the defense yesterday that I accepted. So at some point, we need to figure out a time to talk about them. I'm assuming that the people anticipate presenting more evidence tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that going to take most of the day or probably all day tomorrow?
I believe most of the day, Your
Okay.
Honor, and depending upon what other rulings the court.
Okay. And does the defense have an idea yet as to whether or not you're going to present any evidence?
We're still discussing that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see where we are tomorrow, and then we'll figure out scheduling how we proceed in terms of closing arguments and that kind of thing. Okay. All right. The court will be in recess. Thank you.